Hello and welcome to the Rainy Street podcast with Pank and Heggy. Tonight we're going to be discussing the episode, The Substitute Spanish Prisoner, which first aired on March 23rd of 2002 and is episode 10 of season 6. And now here's Pank with the summary.
So the summary for this one is that Peggy is worried about her overall level of intelligence and takes a IQ test. And the results of the IQ test reveal that she is a genius. But the only problem is it's an online IQ test that is probably for sure fraudulent. And sure enough it is. So she gets duped into a big sort of scam that involves this really swift character, Jeff Goldblum plays. And he swindles her out of $1,000. So she has to try and double down and scam him right back, and she tries her best, and that's basically the episode. So if you guys want to meet us in the alley, we'll crack a few Alamos and shoot the shit about some King of the Hill.
And we hope that if you are listening, you had a ceremonial cheers with us, of course. That's why we always have that awkward pause right after that. So the episode begins with Peggy in the classroom, and she's subbing on this occasion in math, which is obviously not, the 1996 substitute Spanish teacher of the year's forte. So she is giving the results from a test back to the class, and it's pretty adorable because the bonus question is who was the 1996 substitute Spanish teacher of the year? Peggy Hill.
Yeah, she's giving out extra credit on official school curriculum based on their knowledge of her past successes. That's how narcissistic Peggy Hill is, which really sets up the episode.
Absolutely. And this is where Pank and I are a bit divided. I absolutely admire and love Peggy, and you're kind of like, she's got her pluses and her minuses, but she's just such a strong character, so I feel like this episode really plays to that. So I'm interested to see what we discuss. But what it boils down to is essentially Dooley has a question about question 4 that involves like areas of a circle versus a square, and she writes it on the board and then goes to give him the answer and can't. And so when he asks why, he says, and she can't provide an answer, he says, "You can't show your work," which causes her to doubt herself because she can't. The answers in the teacher's edition are all either true or false, and she doesn't know why.
Yeah, which I feel like is probably very accurate to some of the state's education systems.
I actually had a friend, and I'm not going to name any names here, but she's a teacher and was a teacher, and she originally, when she began teaching, she accepted a position as a music teacher with absolutely no music background, and would literally just go on YouTube and study like the music every night before her classes the next day, and that stresses me out. I cannot do that.
I actually saw that in a show. It might have even been King of the Hill, but someone was saying that they teach piano, and whoever the friend was like, "Oh, you don't play piano," and she's like, "Yeah, but you just got to stay one lesson ahead of the kids." It's,
right?
It's tough, but as long as you stay one lesson ahead of them, you're fine.
I could never do that. Like, I have such bad fraud syndrome that literally, even like, I worked in publishing for 10 years. I knew my job pretty inside and out.
Yeah.
And like, if I was ever questioned, I'd be like, "I don't know a fucking thing." Like, I cracked under the pressure like instantly. So I'm just like, how could you, as somebody who's not very good at math, like, to walk into a room where children are looking at you for answers is like, I'm like sweating.
That's Peggy though. She's got balls of steel, and she's got an ego to match.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the one time where she's like shook.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's got imposter syndrome for the first time ever, and she doesn't know what to do about it. She's fucked up over this.
Yeah, and so it kind of comes out like that something's bothering her. So her and Hank are sitting at the kitchen table at the end of the day, and they're going over their retirement fund, and he's like talking about how if they're going to go and follow the cowboys to Green Bays and your Minnesotas, they're going to need a heated steering wheel on their RV. So, like, how much should we allocate for that? Do we need to allocate extra?
Yeah, because they may need to get the better model.
Exactly. And she gets super defensive and is like, do you always do the retirement fund because you don't trust my math? And just, like, totally freaks out about it. And that is like, sorry, something else is bothering me. And it's just so funny how she is talking about herself and her IQ.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't do it because I think you're dumb. I do the banking and stuff because I just like going to the bank. And
so Hank.
And he's like, I don't think you're dumb at all. He's like, you said yourself you have an IQ of like 170, which is such a Peggy thing to do, to put herself in that like way over a genius spectrum. And I actually looked it up, and apparently if you have an IQ of 90 to 109, you're average. So if your IQ is under 90, you're below average. They didn't mention anything below that because they're like, we're not even going to rank you.
It doesn't matter.
We're not going to rank you. But 90 to 109 is average. 110 to 119 is considered a superior IQ, so a very intelligent person. And then an IQ of 120 to 140 would represent a genius.
And so Peggy has put herself at 170.
Yeah, she's put herself up there with like Stephen Hawking and like that weird chess kid from India that's got like an even higher IQ than Stephen Hawking.
And it comes out because like Hank has believed to this point that her IQ is 170. And then she's like, well, there could be room for error, margins for error. I mean, this is just an estimate I've given myself.
Yeah, her estimate of her IQ.
Yeah, and then goes on to be like, what if I'm average? Do you have any idea how dumb average is? Like, thanks, Peggy. Most of us are average. You know?
We were talking about getting IQ tests, and then we sort of chickened out a little bit before we even started because we were very worried about being average or less, so... we've taken some unofficial IQ tests, and we've done well just like everyone else who's taken artificial IQ tests, but we don't have the cojones to do the real deal, I think, at this point.
Well, and just as a side story, when I was younger, I was probably about 8 or 9 at this point. My sister and I both got pulled out of school and were sent to the hospital for testing, IQ testing, because my sister was exhibiting signs of superior intelligence, and we both got our IQs tested, and she was tested as, superior
above average, yeah.
And I was, like, exactly average. And I mean, in my defense, I've definitely put a lot more into, I've gone to some post-secondary and I've worked at it.
Yeah, it can change.
I was only, like, 8 or 9 at the time, but I'm like, what if that title still stands?
It's like stretching, I think. You know what I mean? You can go from being not very flexible to slightly above average flexible. You know what I mean? Like, you can go from dumb to... average at least.
And they obviously saw something in me or else. And I get test anxiety, so maybe I would have had,
You might have just flunked one of the easy questions that you overthought.
Right, which as you know, I do.
Yeah, you're a big overthinker. But I was tested similarly, but for ADHD.
Which
so
I probably do have.
I don't know that they tested my overall intelligence, but I know that they tested me for ADHD, and I passed. According to them, I don't have it.
Good.
But
I was tested not on an intelligence spectrum, but as a teenager, I was tested on a psychological spectrum, and actually, they were very interested in studying me because they said that I had the highest levels of stress with the lowest levels of depression they'd ever seen. And they wanted to have, like, lunch hour sessions and do, like, a full case study on me that I'm like, if anybody out there is listening and knows anything about the study, can I still do it? I was, like, a dweeby teenager who didn't want to forfeit her lunch hours with her friends. But now I'm like, oh, man, I wish I was a part of that study.
Yeah, I would love for them to do studies on me as well.
Right?
How have I not become dead from my lifestyle? Like, how has my lifestyle not torn me apart?
Like, we will submit ourselves to testing.
Yeah. I'm like, I've eaten on average like 3 whole pizzas a week for my entire life.
You want to study the
equivalent.
Body. I want to study the brain.
Yeah.
Somebody study us.
Yeah.
But not aliens.
Yes, no dissections.
No.
Yeah. Or probes.
Just kidding.
You probed the right area.
You of all people know that that's not happening. But that's probably too much information. Can you tell we've had Alamos in preparation for the podcast?
That's part of the charm.
That's part of the charm, we hope.
We're Canadian, we get drunk, and we shoot the shit about a show based in Texas.
And like from 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So anyways, back to the show here, people. Let's keep it on track. So Peggy decides that she wants to test her IQ. She can't...
Officially.
She doesn't want to go with her estimation anymore. So this prompts her to sit down at her Mac, her old school Mac, that she got for Christmas on the Y2K episode.
Not using that K-Pro anymore.
Not anymore. She is a woman.
Now she can take fraudulent IQ tests and everything.
So what is did you write down the title?
I believe it's the Texas Institute of Intelligence. This is the website / organization offering this test that Peggy has now tested positive for as a genius.
Yes, yeah. And this, I mean, it's Bobby that reads out the title and is like, doesn't get much more official than that. So when your 12 to 13-year-old son is like, this is the one, it might be a red flag.
Yeah.
So she does get prompted as a genius and gets a letter in the mail from the Institute that says that she is one of the smartest 150 Texans.
Yeah, so she's among the top 150 for highest IQs in all of Texas.
Yeah, and then not only that, but she is going to get her name in a book, which is being sold at, her special price of $39.99. Regular, I believe it's $59.99 or $49.99. And she is also going to be presented, awarded this at a dinner, which no other person can come to unless they're also a genius by the same ranking as the Institute.
Yeah.
So Hank's talking about this in the alley with the alley boys, and is like, they're hoping, the Institute's hoping that she'll buy 20 of these books. I'm hoping she'll be satisfied with the 8 that we've ordered. So that's still like $320 worth of books that she's ordered.
It seems fishy. You know what I mean? It seems to be getting fishier and fishier. And of course, Dale is the first one to clue in on this because he's Mr. Paranoid, you know what I mean, conspiracy dude. So he's immediately alerted Hank to the fact that, well, if they administer the test and they make the books and they invite you to this thing to come and, you know what I mean, get some sort of a degree or certificate. Maybe, maybe it's not all cracked up.
It's like when somebody's like, ooh, you could be a model. You just have to give us $250 for your own headshots. And then I'm sure, we're going to take a 50% cut. That's a red flag there, people.
Yeah. But sure enough, Peggy's duped. Her ego has not allowed her to see any of these red flags at this point. So she gets herself all dolled up and shows up to go meet the 150 smartest people in Texas and see what kind of opportunities await her as a genius.
And so Jeff Goldblum is the voice character, voice actor for this episode, and he stars as Dr. Robert Weiss Zosa,
who is the head of this organization.
And Jeff Goldblum, a.k.a., you guys might know him more familiarly as Dr. Ian Malcolm, he plays a scientist frequently. The Fly, people. I'm talking Life Aquatic, where he's featured as a biological, or like a marine biologist. He is a smart-seeming guy. So, as you can imagine, that charm and, intelligence extends into this character.
And I love that they set it up like that, too. He introduces himself, and then he says, and may I say I'm a little intimidated being in front of this many intelligent people, and then goes on to attempt to sell them a PhD degree for $999, which is basically a weekend course that allows you to earn your PhD and doctorate.
So it shows them after this, rubbing elbows, the other geniuses. And this is where we discover and meet some of the other geniuses. And Peggy still hasn't clued in at this point that it's a scam and is talking to Jimmy Pritchett, Jimmy Witcher. Witcher, sorry. Yeah. Let's do a little recap on this character. So we know him.
He's the boss.
That's right. He plays Bobby's boss in one episode at the racetrack. We find out in that episode that he incurred brain damage from staring at the sun, speculatively from Dale, except you wouldn't be too smart to be staring at the sun anyways.
Yeah, basically he's like a crazy burnout that fried his brain staring at the sun or doing something equally stupid. You know, welding without a mask or something. He did something really stupid that fucked his brain. And he is now dubbed one of the 150 smartest people in all of Texas.
That's right.
And is now going to be writing his PhD doctorate for $999 and is going to become a doctor.
And that's what they're talking about. Peggy's like, well, Dr. Jimmy.
Dr. Jimmy.
And then he gets angry immediately and is like, I thought of it first. And it's like, that should be your clue, you know? But,
and I love that Dr. Ian Malcolm /
Visosa.
Zosa,
sorry.
Explains to Peggy and sort of quells her suspicions about Jimmy Witcher being a genius by saying, well, if you dropped 153 toothpicks in front of him, you'd see why Jimmy Witcher is here.
Right.
Like
and it shows...
He's smooth. Like, he's got this sale pitch down.
Well, and he can sense that Peggy's easily dupable. Again, like, we account it to her ego and her pride. Not that she's dumb, but he can see that she's maybe a cut above the quality of people that are there.
Right,
so he actually segregates her from the other people. Like, he sees that she's like, why is Jimmy Witcher here? Like, she actually says that.
She's cluing in, yeah.
And he's like, you know, drops that line, but then goes on to be like, you know, you should really consider this PhD. And she's like, well, I don't have $999. So he's like, do you have IRAs? Do you have, you know, this, that?
Do you have a car? Yeah, do you have a car?
Like, he'll take anything. And that's when she's like, well, I have this retirement fund. And, but, you know, Hank and I have been saving for that. And he's like, well, think of your earning power if you are a doctor. And like totally plays to her ego again, which gets her. And
again, he's so smooth. He's like, I don't have to tell a genius how much a doctor makes.
Right?
Like he plays them like a goddamn fiddle.
And that brings us to, have you ever been swindled? Have you ever been duped like this?
I don't think, what did I mention earlier?
I don't remember.
I don't think I've been swindled, no. No, I can't really think of anything. How about you?
I am, like, I was saying...
Great podcast. Sorry to interrupt you, but like, yeah, great podcast. You ever been swindled?
No.
No.
I feel like I have the personality type for it. I'm very trusting, but I'm cheap. And I'm, like, very, like, you have to wrestle that coin purse out of my hand. So I'm, like... I feel like I would be, like, because I remember once when I was in LA with some of my friends, we got, like, wrangled into a Scientology center, and they were like, Tracy, you're lucky you were with us. Like, you were on the verge of training.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm, like, one of those people where I'm, like, I get complimented by someone, I'm like, I will die for you.
You'd be like Bill at the timeshare thing in Mexico.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like I have been fortunate that I have people in my life watching out for me. And I'm not dumb. Like, I definitely am, like,
no,
actually,
you're not.
I'm like, really, I'm such a weird, I feel like every time I just contradict myself in these podcasts because I'm like, I'm this, but I'm also this. Like, I'm super skeptical of everybody. And then I'm also at the same time, like, too trusting of everybody. So I'm like, I haven't been, thankfully, yet.
Yeah.
But I guess TBD, people to be determined.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of the same way in that for most of my life, I didn't have the money to be swindled. You know what I mean? I was not the type of person that would be viewed as a high value target.
A rube,
yeah,
as the Simpsons.
They're like, we can't. He's got nothing. Like,
yeah,
what are we
gonna get?
He's a leftover fucking pizza from last night. Like, he's got nothing. You can't get blood from a stone. You know,
like Zoidberg grade possessions, where he'd be like, I'll take that leftover pizza.
And now because of that lifestyle, I feel like I'm like you. I'm too frugal to be swindled. You know what I mean? Like I'm probably dumb enough. Like you're not dumb enough.
But
and you're too frugal, and you're trusting, but I'm like dumb enough, but way too frugal. And
you're also, though, skeptical. So I feel like we are on a very fine line right here.
Yeah, we could go either way, given the right opportunity.
I guess the takeaway from this is we're not judging anybody out there.
Yeah, if you've been swindled, I hear you, man. I'm fucking hurting too. I'd love an easy way out.
I feel like I do sometimes like cosplay with my cat and I will get like bots on Instagram that are like, hey baby, you could be a model, and part of me wants to believe
Want to collab?
Like, I'm like, oh my, like part of me is like, could this be it? Could my charm finally have reached the masses and I'm gonna be rich now? But I like will go to Reddit every time, like, is this legit? And they're usually like, sweetheart, you sweet thing.
You poor girl.
Yeah, you want this, but so it's there for me, you know.
So never been swindled, luckily. I mean,
knock on wood, though.
I feel like we should have been by now.
Yeah,
we never had a Nigerian prince come and fuck our lives up, you know.
Yet.
Yet.
So TBD, like I said.
Yeah, we only now have just enough money to be swindled, so we've only become available as someone to be swindled for a very short time. So I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
So anyways, the great Dr. Vaizosa manages to latch on to Peggy. It's that invest in yourself comment that gets her. And she pulls out the checkbook, and it's so sad because there's pre-written out checks on it to RV World and another one like that are blank for their retirement fund, and she skips past those straight to a blank one and asks who she should make it out to, and he says cash. So smarmy. And so she fills it out and gets her parcel, which contains 40 sessions.
Yeah, they're little like booklets that are maybe like 20 pages each.
And are simple. It's essentially like circle the shape and then circle the corresponding word on the next page.
Which I'm not going to necessarily disagree with, because some of the intelligence tests that I've done are like
logic
pattern
based
recognition and shit like that, where it's not necessarily a very difficult algebra question or an obscure history question or some sort of equally obscure biology question. You know, it's never just your exact knowledge, it's your ability to figure things out.
But it is also like in those ones there's usually like a logical pattern that you're supposed to be identifying, whereas this is literally like a triangle and the word triangle. So not as advanced. By the end it looks like maybe it's gotten a little bit more advanced because she's now circling 2 points of a triangle, so there could be like angles included and stuff. But it's just a voice that's like, welcome to course 1 of the workbook.
Yeah, and even if it is reasonably difficult, Peggy Hill finished it in one night. So how hard could it be, really? It
literally is playing the graduation song. After she says, what a night, after completing course book 40. And it's saying, like, congratulations, you have now earned your PhD. And she prints off and fills out her own PhD certificate. Which, like, red flags.
So now she thinks she's a full-blown doctor, which is such a dangerous fucking thing. Could you imagine if she was at a mall and some sort of tragic thing happened where multiple people were injured, God forbid, and killed, and somebody yells out, "Is there a doctor anywhere here?" And Peggy, being Peggy Hill, yells out, "I'm a doctor." You know what I mean?
Just to play devil's advocate for a minute here, I feel like Peggy would do that even without the PhD, because this is a woman who once called in a false propane emergency and then told Hank that she had consulted with God on it. God told her not to do it, but she knew better. I wouldn't put it past Peggy without the PhD, but I think you're absolutely right.
And has an self-estimated IQ of 170, which is like on par with the smartest people that have ever lived.
So I'm like, I wouldn't put it past her. Just be like, you know what, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell, in my opinion.
But could you imagine the dick waving she would do with what she thinks is a PhD in doctorate?
Well, and we see that because it shows her at breakfast clearly like being up all night, and Bobby is referring to her as doctor. She refers to herself as doctor, and then Hank's like, you know, she's like, I have a PhD. He's starting to see that this is a scam, and you know, Bobby's like refers to her as doctor, and he's like, don't make fun of your mother. He's like, I'm not. She's a doctor.
Yeah.
But I think this is probably a really good point to end it. We're kind of reaching like the climax here where Peggy's gone on up a bit of a high.
Yeah, she's a doctor.
That's right.
How could you not be high on yourself? I imagine every doctor in any part of the world is like, I'm a fucking doctor. Like,
Oh, yes.
even if they were the most humble person in the fucking world, they'd be like, yeah, but
Still
they'd pull the doctor card whenever they needed to.
As, like, just me, like, I feel like I pull all kinds of cards. Like, I will tell myself, Tracy, you don't need to drop this right. Oh, my name. Anyways.
You don't know how we spell it.
Yeah. Good luck finding
Good luck finding me, fuckers.
Anyways, I will tell myself, Heggy.
Heggy.
You don't need to drop this. And then I'll still, like, mention it 2 seconds later and be like, this is what I did. One time, John Stamos told me I was pretty. Mean Girls reference. He didn't actually tell me I was pretty. That was just a Mean Girls reference from my fans out there.
Oh, no.
Anyways, I'm going to end it here.
But, yeah, tune in for part number 2 where we discover that Peggy is now aware of the fact that she's been scammed. Yeah. And she's out for blood and guts, and only blood and guts will do.
We will say, so I will ask you, how does she find out that she's been scammed?
Oh, yeah, so the best part of it is that Hank, of course, being as clever as he is, finds a way to illustrate to her without any reason of doubt that she's been scammed. And the way he does that is to have Luann take this Texas Institute of Intelligence test and to let Peggy view the test and her results. And the results are that Luann is also a genius.
Ding, ding, ding.
Which, if you know anything about King of the Hill, is that Luann is about as far from a genius as you could possibly fucking be.
Yes, absolutely. So we will meet you in the alley for part 2 to discuss how Peggy gets herself out of this situation, or does she?